was like 6 years old, I was in kindergarten, but sometimes I wouldn't know ABC or 1, 2, 3 compared to other kids. They might know it a little more than me. And I always thought, man, this sucks. I cannot be like these kids. And my life is just terrible. That's what I thought at the time. But one thing is that throughout my life, this kind of did hamper things in my early life. As I got into my middle school, my elementary schools, all that kind of stuff. I'll still tell you guys to this day, one thing was that difference always kind of made me feel a little less than everybody. When I got into the 8th grade, I'll never forget, this was my turning point. So we had like a moving up ceremony going from middle to the higher school. And one thing is that, now, I'm thinking of one day just trying to rectify this from the school system entirely. But one thing is that they had all the students come up on stage who actually did well in their classes, whether it was like getting A's or 90s, whatever the case may be. I remember at the time that I did not care about school. I'm going to be completely honest, because I always felt like this is my life. I'm not going to have a career. I'm not going to have anything. I don't know why bother with all this stuff. I'm just going to sit in my room and just do nothing. It doesn't matter. But one thing was that after that ceremony, I remember that I had to sit in with the rest of the audience and be called in separately compared to the other kids on the stage. One thing I remember after that whole ceremony, because they kept saying they got a mail from the president and all that kind of stuff. My mom was talking to me right after, and I remember my dad was there too, and they both were like, Manav, why weren't you on the stage? Why didn't you do this? And I didn't know how to say it at the time, but I didn't know how to say to my mom, I don't know how to get this through your head. I'm not going to be like them. I don't think that I belong there. There's no reason for that whatsoever. But you know, me and Manav, of course, my mom was just like, no, you have to do this and all that kind of stuff. That was prevalent. That was very prevalent. But one thing is that did awaken me, if I'm going to be honest with all of you. After that, I spent that whole entire summer. What I did was that going into the high school, I had looked up everything when it came to classes, when it came to extracurriculars. How can I make sure that I succeed, even if it feels like the world is against me? So one thing I did was that I didn't let anything hamper me down anymore. Throughout my whole life, I always faced that issue, that I always looked at it like I have this weakness, that there's no way to overcome it. There's no way that I can change things overnight. Hell, there was like so many other people who might have tried, right? There's so many people in my grade that I've been with since I was very young who still hadn't gotten out. So there was no example there. But one thing is that I made sure, and I persisted. I made sure that I can at least give my mom that dream. Maybe then I could be on the stage when I'm graduating or something. That's what I thought. But one thing, graduating high school, I mean. But one thing is that when I reached high school the first day, I made sure. One thing I'll tell you about my disorder of being ADHD is that I have a lot of fixations on things. So attention deficit hyperactive disorder, that's what it means. So when I fixate on something, I focus on it. So what am I saying? When it comes down to it, let's say I'm reading a book, right? Or I'm watching a movie. I'm really into watching movies. A lot of you here probably have watched a lot of Bollywood, Hollywood movies every now and then. One thing is that I'm one of those guys who probably everybody hates to sit with when they're watching a movie. When there's one thing that happens in some particular scene, I will fixate on that for like 30 minutes. I'm not even joking. There was one movie I was watching, one show I was watching recently, Stranger Things. And I know that's a big one on theories and all that kind of stuff. And one thing there was one scene that popped up, and I was just looking at that one scene because I thought this relates to the ending of the show. That I paused the whole show for everybody watching, and I was like, okay, this is what happens. This is why this is the case. This is why it's important. And everyone was like, dude, can we just watch the show? Like, that was one thing. So that's one thing about my fixations, is that I thought if this is something that I want to improve on,